Hello and welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. Today I finished reading The Journey to the West, a classic of Chinese literature. The novel is published by University of Chicago Press in 4 volumes. The first volume there is the thickest of the 4 because it has a lengthy introduction. The tale is told in 100 chapters, and each volume has 25 of them. So it was a month-long endeavor for me. I had to push it a little bit in order to finish before April 1st, which is when I hope to begin reading Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, another mammoth novel. But having finished this, I thought that I should talk about it a little bit. I'm not going to give a review. I'm not capable of a review, but I do admire people who do. And I came across a very nice one at Amazon. Let's see, the edition that I read was the first edition, and there is an updated edition. Let's see, that doesn't give you very much to go on, but the updated edition incorporates some changes by the translator Anthony C. Yu, and also transliterates the Chinese into pinyin as opposed to the old Wade Giles, which I went with because as an oldster, I'm more comfortable with that. But for anybody who is younger than myself and comfortable with pinyin, I would say that probably the revised edition would be the better choice. I believe it also comes in an ebook, which might be wise so that you don't have to be carrying this around with you. But there was a very nice review at Amazon. If you're discerning, you can oftentimes find a good review here or there at Amazon for works such as this, which are not in the mainstream. And let me just read you the review here, written by Brian Tung, T-U-N-G. He gave it a 5 stars. And the title is A Carefully Crafted Rendition of a Chinese Classic. Parenthetically, he begins, The Journey to the West is so well known a story in Chinese culture that I won't bother to review the story as such, but will focus on the translation. This book is the first volume of a 4-volume translation. This review covers all 4 volumes. And then he begins the review proper. Any translation of a literary work, let alone between languages as different as Chinese and English are, is an exercise in compromise and cleverness. A particular sentence in Chinese, even a single phrase, can be rendered in numerous ways in English, each one of them carrying a different set of nuances. To maintain narrative flow, though, the translator must choose just one of those ways, which represents an indelible choice as to what aspect of the original will be conveyed to the reader. That is the compromise. The cleverness comes in the insight and deftness with which the translator crafts and arranges those choices into a coherent whole. It is said that one should always translate into one's A language, that is the language in which one is most fluent. But Dr. Anthony Yu was a native Chinese speaker, and although years of teaching in the United States made him fluent in English, it was not his primary language. It is a testament to his genius and his decades of work on this, a story that he describes as near and dear to his heart, that this English version is as faithful to the Chinese original as can be hoped, and yet reads as sprightly and as uproariously as though it were, in fact, the original. Something must be done with those nuances, though. Some translators choose to insert them directly into the body of the work, as Howard Goldblatt does in his translation of Mo Yan's Life and Death Are Wearing Me Out. But perhaps the journey to the West is too full of Buddhist, Taoist, and other cultural allusions for them to be adequately captured in a passing sentence. So Yu's translation is copiously endnoted, and these notes are full of fascinating material on the religious and philosophical environment in which both the story is written and its action takes place. Included also are scholarly citations that justify, with a degree of rigor that will probably be overlooked by the average reader, all the various word and phrasing choices he made. In some cases, Yu's study has even found errors in the original text. The first volume of this translation adds an introduction that describes the textual history of this story, Wu Cheng'en's presumed authorship, biographical sketches of the real people depicted in the novel, and Wu's motivations for writing it and them the way that he did. These additions admirably fill out the narrative and setting delivered to us so seamlessly by Yu. Other translations may have quainter charm or somewhat more fluid English, but this one provides such a complete perspective on the novel that it presents itself immediately as the de facto standard, a must-have for the dedicated reader. And I think that is so. I first got interested because I had seen a GoFundMe for a comic book version, and I thought that I should go to the original text first. I'm not a big reader of graphic novels. I may undertake this. When I first looked at this, I said, meh. But after having read the original text, now when I look at it, I think it appears pretty stupendous. So we'll see if I give that a chance. But the book is a fantasy, and fantasy is not a favorite genre of mine. I really don't think I've read any fantasy to speak of. I've never read J.R.R. Tolkien. It's not a genre that appeals to me. In this case, I did not mind. So the story arc is so similar to countless Hollywood movies that I can recall seeing. And let me try to parse that out a little bit. It's almost along the lines of one of those heist movies where you gather together four reformed bad guys and put them together because they have to do one last job, so to speak. All of these characters, except for the main character, the monk, are persons with illustrious evil paths, let's say, who in the process of the story reform and accept the truth of Buddhism. And then it carries on a little bit the aspect of a road story. So they're all on the road to the West, and they get into adventures along the way. And at that point, the fantasy element comes into play. Their way is blocked by countless mountains, and in every tall mountain there is a cave harboring a monster. Then there are great battle scenes to rival anything in a special effect driven kung fu epic. Except you have to imagine it all of the cloud fighting and so forth. the place where the element of fantasy comes in, I realized, is that it's almost like that old Batman TV show, but other movies are similar in that the heroes find themselves in a predicament constantly. So they're tied up, and the baddies, the villains, never kill them outright. They wait. They want to invite some other illustrious personages over to. Generally, they want to feast upon the monk and upon the disciples, and so it requires several days waiting, and so that gives the heroes opportunity to break free and win the day against these ghouls and ghosts and demons. I think that may well be the deciding element of what makes fantasy, because you realize in real life that if somebody has an enemy to that level and the enemy has the chance, the first thing they will do is kill that person. They won't even give the person a chance necessarily to know that they're lurking as an enemy. So needless to say, the first 50 chapters were hard going for me. I was appalled with just sort of the sheer stupidity of everything, but I kept with it. And somewhere around 50, 51, I just decided to let go and go with the flow of it. And then it became a lot more enjoyable. Finally, at the end, say around chapter 90, I really got excited about the plot as the climax was reached. So in all, I'm glad that I read it. In fact, there's another review at Amazon that a person gives a very good sort of synopsis of the story. This is by Laszlo Hopp, Hopp. He only gave it 4 stars, and his headline is "A Unique Ancient Story Where the Sidekick is the Undisputable Hero." I read the 4-volume revised Kindle edition of this book, translated by Anthony C. Yu. The story is the fictive rendition of a journey made by a 7th century Buddhist monk, Zhuangzhan, during the Tang Dynasty. He undertook his famous nearly 2-decade-long pilgrimage in order to study Buddhism and acquire original Sanskrit texts of the religion from India. When he returned to China, he translated many of the original texts to Chinese, thus leaving a decisive legacy on Chinese Buddhism. Some of the pilgrim's original scrolls are saved in a pagoda inside Xingjiao Temple near today's Xi'an. The story starts with the mystical events of a creature becoming the handsome Monkey King. Through various twists and turns, he acquires great skills and a variety of supernatural power, which he will continue to use throughout the book. Some mischievous acts in heaven land him in trouble, but upon the departure of Xuanzang, in the book also called Tang Monk or Tripitaka, after the 3 baskets of Buddhism that held the 3 original Buddhist scrolls from the emperor's palace, the Monkey King is given the opportunity to become the disciple and protector of the monk. In the first phase of the long journey, Tripitaka is granted 2 additional converted vicious monsters as his disciples: 8 Rules, who has the appearance of a pig, and Sha Monk, who has the look of a water buffalo. To complete the mystical traveling company, a water monster is enforced to serve as the replacement of Tripitaka's deceased horse. The bulk of the story is the description of the group's arduous traveling through impenetrable forests, burning mountains, and dangerous rushing rivers. They encounter countless demons, spirits, monsters, dragons, and fiends, who invariably want to devour the guiltless Tripitaka. This enhanced interest in the Tang monk as a culinary delight roots from his purity that is thought to guarantee extremely long life to the cannibalistic food connoisseurs. With his boundless ingenuity and smarts, the Monkey King leads the three disciples to defend the monk. For the contemporary reader, the story has a few stumbling blocks, not the least of which is the length of almost 2,400 pages. In the book, one will find numerous repetitions where the four main heroes tend to recite some of their earlier adventures in various situations when they meet new characters. The reader is already fully aware of these events, and they tend to slow down the flow of the story. One can skip these paragraphs, however, without losing much from the narration. I did not skip those narratives, incidentally. For some readers, another obstacle could be the numerous poems and songs throughout the book. In my rough estimation, 15 to 20% of the text may well be poetry. The poems are enjoyable and usually provide finer details of or clarifications to the main story. As such, they are more functionally part of the book than in another classic pillar of ancient Chinese literature, the poetry in The Dreams of the Red Mansion. In that book, the poems and songs are highly transcendent with the purpose of providing insight into the characters' inner selves. I skimmed through many, but not all poems. Others may decide to skip the poems altogether, but those who decide to read them in even greater detail will experience an enhanced overall literary beauty of the book. Of the four characters, the Monkey King is by far the best portrayed one, and the main reason I gave not 3 but 4 stars to the book. He is an absolute riot, a perfect, timeless embodiment of a bad guy turned good who has a curiously complex psyche with a mixture of self-adoration, self-assuredness, mischief, steadfast loyalty, courage, wisdom, practicality, and on top of everything, a great sense of humor. Typical of him is the name he has chosen to himself early in the story, the great sage equal to heaven. Among all the fictive characters I have encountered in my readings, the Monkey King has become one of my all-time favorites for his colorful and likable temperament and for the exquisite perfection with which he has been portrayed. Although the Tang monk is formally the lead hero of the story, he really pales in comparison to the Monkey King. He is the most benevolent, spiritually pure individual imaginable who is singularly driven by his unshakable convictions and principled Buddhist mind. Unfortunately, he is also gullible to the point of annoyance, and this brings a copious amount of trouble to the poor Monkey King. 8 Rules is a secondary character whose personality is also drawn with an expert pen. He is stupid, yet quite capable in many ways. His loyalty to the monk never feels solidified. However, he seems to function perfectly well under the critical tutelage of the Monkey King and the exculpation of the high-minded Tripitaka. The character of the third disciple, Sha Monk, is far less complete than the previous 3 and doesn't deserve particular attention in this review. Overall, the book in its length is not an easy read. I recommend it mostly to those tickled by a potential glimpse into the spirituality of an ancient world, namely the Tang Dynasty, from the perspective of a much later but still very old time, namely the late Ming Dynasty. What a rare privilege to enjoy such a treasure. That's the bulk of his review, and I think I can pretty much second everything. As I say, I did not skip over any part of it. The poems vary. In some cases, Anthony Yu handles the meter He puts them generally into an iambic pentameter, not always though, depending. Handles it expertly, sometimes not so. And the same with the rhymes where he's opted to put rhyme. I think all in all he did a good job. It is not to the level of The Plum in the Golden Vase done by David T. Roy. But there again, of course, David T. Roy was putting the Chinese into his A language, as the first review commented. So I am very glad that I read it. I have a fairly extensive, almost lifelong exposure to aspects of Chinese culture. I am far from a fluent speaker of the Chinese language, but I have enough to where I can sometimes see the words behind the words, not literally by any means, but a sense of how the structure of a sentence or a poem might have worked in the original. So I was less put off by that than another reader might be. And as for all of the abstruse Taoist and Buddhist terminology, I let most of that pass by me. A disadvantage to the older edition is the Chinese, when it's written, has just been done by hand, and so it's sometimes just printed too lightly to really see all that well. And I would imagine that in the revised edition they've corrected that. So that might be the edition, as I say, that I would recommend you go for. This is hopefully going to be my year of the Mammoth novels, and I have other Chinese novels, including The Dream of Red Mansions, waiting in the wings, which perhaps, if I'm lucky, I will get to. I will leave that there. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.